out. It looked to me more like a royal battle than it did like.
Well, yeah, and I'm like trying to fend off as soon as I have a good attack, boom, another one comes, and boom, another one comes. It was a very unusual format.
It's very interesting.
It was interesting.
It's actually something I wanted to ask you because, obviously you're used to this and you're used to debating with people, and when people don't get their way, they like to throw insults if their point's not making across. How do you deal with that? Because it must get a little difficult at times. Some people, they like to, insult the way you look or something that you said, and does that affect you a little bit?
No, it doesn't. Look, if you have to in my physical appearance, then you probably don't have much to say about my ideas, which means my ideas are probably pretty good. So, yeah, it doesn't bother or faze me. You can't let that stuff get to you.
Cool. I've been practicing not getting offended just off the Bible verses. Only a fool is offended. So I was like, I don't want to be a fool.
And just get so joking.
All right, let's get into it. What are you worried about, man? I want to learn a little bit more about the election. What are you scared that it could turn, and what are things that you're hoping we could press on?
Yeah, look, I want to kind of go back to something we said earlier. I'm really worried that a bunch of Christians aren't voting. I'm very concerned about that. Trump could win. Kamala could win. Look, the problem with this election is that it feels bigger than other elections in the past.
Way bigger.
Because we no longer have a Democrat Party that wants the same basic things that we have always wanted, such as a secure border, a stable currency, and the American dream for the next generation. So I imagine in your audience, there's some people that have made up their mind on this election. And let me speak to them. Here is a fact. They are the first generation since George Washington to have it worse off than their parents. It has never happened before in American history. Every generation has had it at least as good or better than their parents. That's what we call the American dream. You come to this country, you grow up in this country, your kids are going to have a better shot at the American dream than you do. They'll be wealthier. Whatever the metric is, our generation is sicker, fatter, more depressed, more anxious, more Medicaid, harder to buy a home. Here's one number. When Trump was president, you could buy a home with $75,000 of combined annual income a year. Now, $130,000 a year. That's in 4 years. So homeownership is quickly getting out of grasp for the next generation. Their wages aren't going up with inflation, grocery prices are going up, and we touched on this in our original conversation, which is super simple, which is that you don't have to overthink this. If you cannot walk at night in the great American cities, your leaders have failed and they should be fired. This is not complicated. I don't need a chart. I don't need a graph. I don't need data. I don't need an economist. If you don't feel safe walking the streets of LA, Denver, or Phoenix at night, somebody who is in charge has not done their job and somebody else needs to be replaced. That's not the case in Singapore. It's not the case in Tokyo. But in the Western world, we act as if it's normal that you have to lock yourself in an apartment at 8 p.m. because the sun is going down, or you need armed security, or that you can only go in certain neighborhoods. It's outrageous and it's wrong, and we shouldn't put up with it. But yet, to the next generation, if you want to restore and renew your access to the American dream, you've seen what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have done. Harder than ever to find good paying jobs. You can't buy homes. You'll be a nation of renters. And not to mention, we have allowed 10 million new people into this country illegally, without permission, that are newcomers, that were not invited, that have inflated the price of housing. Let me just make this super simple argument. Why is housing becoming more expensive? Well, when you have more people, 10 million more people, that are then trying to compete for a finite good, it increases the price of it. This is why sand is cheap and diamonds are expensive. Supply and demand. There's only so much of things in the world. And so what Kamala Harris has done is she said there are no restrictions, no background checks. And let me speak to people's emotions for a second. Under her leadership on the border, quote, we have 320,000 missing kids in this country. We don't know where they are. You guys can fact check me on that, by the way. That's not a Charlie Kirk statistic. That's the Department of Homeland Security. We don't know where they are. They could be sex slaves. They could be trafficked for labor. They could be just generally missing. That's 320,000 missing kids. What kind of a society are we if that is okay? Under Trump, border crossings were an all-time low. We had a border. The Border Patrol Council just endorsed Trump. And the final point I'll make is this, is you're not voting for Trump. You're voting for which side is going to create a roster of 5,000 people that better fits with your worldview. Trump is just the figurehead, if you will. There are 5,000 staffing positions that need to be made of people that will determine whether or not you have a border, whether or not your wages are going to go up, how foreign policy be operated. So do you want your government to be filled with people like Anthony Fauci and Tony Blinken and Dylan Mulvaney, people like that? Or would you rather have people like Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, and Bobby Kennedy filling your government? It's a pretty simple choice.